Peg Burns here, Gospel Nonviolence, Curriculum Materials, Our Golden Thread. This work that we have out is two pieces that I've decided should belong together. Events in isolation and the solution. So we're just going to be calling this the solution. Because we don't really want children focused on war, we're going to lessen the time of looking at each individual war that we came to when we laid out all of the outcomes from Constantinian Christianity. So if they want to do that, or they need to do that for school or something, that's one thing. But with this, what we really want to do is get the basic idea about war and violence and move to the solution. And we do have the solution. So what we're going to do is notice black folders that are about each of the wars or significant events. And there's content inside that explains basically what happened, some artwork that's connected with it if that's available, and something about the religious justification. So I'll just lay out this material, and I've decided to do this on the timeline with the dark fabric that blocks the light showing. It doesn't have to be done always on the timeline, but that's good for the impression of it in the beginning. So along with the folders and that content, we have some movable pieces in these envelopes which will be kept in the black folders. So I just happened to choose St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre. So what we have at that point is an event that happened August 24th, 1572, shortly after the Reformation. And we'll say a little bit about what happened. I'll read this card material. I don't have this kind of content memorized. Basic understanding, but frankly, I don't want to have that, what's filling my head. So I use the card material, and this is just basic history available in history books and internet. From 1562 to 1598, a series of 8 wars between Catholics and Protestants, maybe called the French Huguenots, raged in France. So all Christians in France. The goal was to exterminate all Protestants. Both sides had their military operations fully engaged. After the first 3 wars erupted, bloody Bartholomew's Day Massacre occurred, named because it occurred on the feast of the Apostle St. Bartholomew, August 24th. It so happened that in this particular event, the Catholics massacred the Huguenots, killing men, women, and children. Both Protestants, but Protestants took their turn leading the bloodshed. Over the next several weeks, the violence spread to over a dozen cities in France, killing thousands. 5 more wars, called the French Wars of Religion, continued after this massacre. Warring finally ended in 1598. So 1562 to 1598, each side having its time of leading in the killing, but the goal was for each side to exterminate the others. So that's basically the event. It's wars of religion, definitely involved. There were economic issues connected to it also. So here's some religious justification connected to the situation. And we'll put out this picture of a coin that was minted or struck. Pope Gregory XIII commissioned an artist to paint 3 murals depicting aspects of this violent event. Along with this, he had a bronze medal struck commemorating the massacre. So pleased with the results was he. Protestants, of course, were horrified that the Pope would have such an opinion. So we call that religious justification of the situation. There's other artwork because it's a famous kind of event, so I'll just put that down. And it's gruesome just looking at the artwork. With this piece, we are lucky to have an apology from Pope Benedict XVI. This was something he said on October 27th, 2011. As a Christian, I want to say at this point, yes, it is true in the course of history, force has also been used in the name of the Christian faith. We acknowledge it with great shame, but it is utterly clear that this was an abuse of the Christian faith, one that evidently contradicts its true nature. The God in whom we Christians believe is the Creator and Father of all, and from Him all people are brothers and sisters and form one single family. For us, the cross of Christ is the sign of the God who put suffering with, compassion, and loving with in place of force. His name is God of love and peace. It is the task of all who bear responsibility for the Christian faith to purify the religion of Christians again and again from its very heart, so that it truly serves as an instrument of God's peace in the world, despite the fallibility of humans. So that is a very important statement there, because when we have to remember, young people are learning history as they get older, and they're able to tell it doesn't make sense. So the manipulative part of this can be something like, the reminders, the symbol of the Christian world, the symbol of the secular world. And we can see that part of France, this is a map of France that's cut in half. Christian, you see the cross there. Part of France, or this geographic land, we can even say, was fighting against, it's a broken world, fighting against the other part. They might have been saying the Our Father because they were Christian, but they were thinking as if it's my Father. Their mentality was my Father. And that's a different dynamic. That's a whole different ballgame. And the solution, the solution to this, it's the same solution for every, the contents of every war, with what goes on and all the paperwork and every war, same solution every single time. We have to get back to the Our Father. We have to get back to putting on the mind of Christ, who was not just someone who said, don't kill. He said, live as God is your Father. Christianity is really a yes to God as Father of all. And that brings us back to the people who lived that way, the nonviolent followers, the martyrs that we've come across in the early church, people who put on the mind of Christ, people who were part of the enemy-loving community. So by the time a student is using this material, they're old enough to go back to the biographies and be reading adult-level content on these people, which is amazingly supportive and comforting.